Without any further ado, here's Aaron.
Come on, let's get it going. Applause. Get it going. Thank you. Thank you. Like Jeremy so warmly introduced me, I'm Aaron Krauss. This is a nice appearance. Thanks everyone for coming. Thanks everyone on Twitch who's streaming, who's tuning in. So I'm Aaron Krauss, and we're going to be talking about running a Rails app with Docker. This one happens to be an API. I think I mistitled that because the name of the talk is running a Rails app, but it is an API as well. So this is a continuation of last month's talk, and if you weren't here, that's completely okay. The only thing we did last time was go over some best practices when building an API, but we don't need any of those best practices. We're going to start from the core that we built last time, which is a Rails app. And again, that's not really important. I'm going to show what it is, and then we'll build off of that. So I'm the code boss on Twitter. You should follow me there, everyone. I work at a company called Clever. That's our cool gear logo. We do consulting work. We also have some internal products in the works. I drink tea, I like beer, and I am the proud father of a 1-week-old Nintendo Switch. So, what's Docker? We're not going to talk about that yet. We're going to get there. Baby steps. Baby. I just thought of that now. So, our game plan. We're going to update our application to send an email. It's phenomenal. Sending an email. And that's all we're going to do, this whole 40-minute talk. But I clocked this at about 40 minutes, so we're ideally going to get out around 12:20, then questions. I don't ever hold you guys late. At least I try not to. This is not just any email, though. By the app we built, let me show you what the app looks like. So our API right now has got three tables: a user table, a post table, and a comment table. A user is going to have many posts. User is going to have many comments. A post is going to have many comments as well. It's just a simple blog. So we are going to send an email when a new comment is created. And we're going to send that email to the creator of that post. And that's all we're going to do this whole time. We're going to send an email for all mankind. America. How are we going to do this? So right now we just have one Rails app, and I'm going to show you that here in a minute. Just one service. To send this email, we're going to need to generate an email, generate a mailer. We're going to hook it up to Sidekick. Sidekick is a background processing library for Rails. There's a bunch you can choose from. I think Sidekick is one of the top choices. So that's an extra service right there. You got to have a worker running to actually do that. The reason we want to hook it up to a background process is because email sending can take a lot more time, and your server doesn't want to do that synchronously, ideally. If you're doing one email, that might be okay, but if you're spending 10 emails, that's a burden. And then we're going to send it to something called MailDev. MailDev is an application. It's a node package that you can just run, and it runs an SMTP server that you can send mail to, and it won't send it out. It will just capture it, and if you're in development mode, if you're developing, you can view that email. It's a really cool tool, and I think you'll like it when you see it. So that's another service. It's a lot of services. 4, to be exact. We have our Rails server. We have Sidekick. I haven't mentioned Redis yet, but Sidekick depends on Redis to queue up jobs. And then we have MailDev, all different applications. So this is a perfect reason to use Docker, but we're not going to use Docker yet. I'm going to build this without Docker, so you know what code we're adding in, so that when we change it to use Docker, you'll be able to see it. And I want you to be able to see the benefit of why you might want to use Docker in a situation like this. So no, we're not going to use it yet, but we're going to use it soon. Don't worry. That'll be phase 2 of this talk. So let's code. So what we're going to do first, let me just run the server so you can kind of see what it looks like. So it's an API. I'll zoom in on this when I get it going. You can see we've got our Rails app going. And this is just a JSON API. If we go to our users table, our users endpoint, you can see we've got users here. We've got 2 users. The data is not really important. In fact, we're really not even going to be looking at this much at all. Just want to show it. We've got posts, and we've got comments. So that's all our API does right now. And it'll handle post request, put request, you know, the standard CRUDs. So the first thing we need to do is we were going to generate a mailer. So let's do that. I'm going to try to do all my commands on this screen. So we're going to generate a comment mailer. So if I open up our code here, we have a new comment mailer here. So we're going to create a method for when we send a new comment. This is going to accept a comment object. We're going to set an instance variable equal to comment so that we can access it in our mailers. And then we're just going to mail it out. And we want to send this to the person who created the post that this comment is on. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with comment. We're going to grab the post. We're going to grab the user who wrote the post. We're going to send it to their email address. This is all set up in the database. And then we're just going to say the subject is new comment. Okay, the only other thing we're going to do here is just set a default from address. Just notifications@example.com. Perfect. That's all we need to do for this mailer. Now we actually need to build out the views for the mailer, which we don't have any right now. So let's create both HTML and text versions of it. So I'm going to go to app. I think it's in views, isn't it? Okay. Okay, we've got our two mailers there, just empty files, and there they are right there. So we're not going to put very much in here, and I'm just going to copy some HTML over that I have. This is my little handy-dandy hint sheet for when I get lost, which will inevitably happen. And you can see this one goes over a little bit. We're going to send an email that says this is a new comment. Your post was received from, your post received a comment from the person who issued the comment, and this is the actual comment. Nothing crazy at all. Let's build out the text version, which we're just going to copy the whole thing and strip out the HTML tags. Okay, so we've got our mailer set up. Now we need to actually, put the logic in to send the mailer whenever we create a new comment. So we're going to go over here to our comments controller. And we want to do this on the create action. So once the comment is successfully created, meaning after it's saved properly, but before we render out the JSON, we want to send this comment. I'm going to pass in our comment. And we're going to use the deliver later flag. We could use deliver now. What that will do is action mailer will, if you use deliver later, it will queue up a job using active job to send out a mail, but we don't have any adapter for active job right now. We don't have a background process running, so if you don't have anything running, then it will just send it synchronously. So in this situation, using deliver later would be the same effect as using deliver now. It's just going to block the code until it sends, and then keep going. So when we create a comment now, this should send out, except we need to do one last thing, and that's set up just SMTP settings. So now is where I want to get into kind of showing what MailDev is, and this is a really cool tool that I learned about at Clever. Has anyone used MailDev before, or anything like it? Okay. Has anyone sent an email out before? This is going to be super cool. So it's just, it's an npm package, it's npm install -g MailDev, and we're just going to run it. And what it does is it runs an SMTP server on a port, but it also runs a web server, so you can actually, see the emails that you're going to capture. So that is localhost 1080. Well, that zoomed in quite a bit. So this is, whenever we send an email, we're going to send it to localhost port 1025, that's the SMTP server, and it's just going to render the email out here, and it's not going to send it. It's perfect for development. There's no threat of accidentally sending an email, or there's no threat of, worrying about Gmail's filtering or blocking, things like that. So we need to now update our development config. Okay, and we're just going to update. I don't have any mail settings right now. We're just going to add that in at the very top, and I am going to copy that in again, just a few lines, but I know I'd mess them up if I typed them. Okay, we're just saying that we're telling Action Mailer that we want to send emails via SMTP. We're saying that the address is localhost of our SMTP server. The port is 1025. You can easily see all of that right here. And then we're specifying that we don't want to use any SSL. So now that we've updated a config file, we need to actually restart our server. That's maildiv. And now, whenever I issue a post request, because we added that code in the create action of the comments controller, we should now see an email. So I'm going to run this curl command that I have. I'm going to step through this just for a second. We're issuing a post request to localhost 3000/comments. We're passing in a body, which is the comment body, it's just foo. This one kind of gets trippy because it's on the next line, but this is comment user ID, so the person who's going to be sending the comment has a user ID of 2. That's going to translate to Sammy user is his name. And then the post ID, the post we're adding the comment to, is just 1. So we're just going to run that. And we get a response, and now we should get a comment right here. I know it doesn't seem like much, but this is just, if you have to test emails a lot, this is a really cool tool to do it with. Just show it one more time, I'm going to run that curl command again, and bam, there it is. You can view the comments. Anyway, I love it. So we've got that done. So we're sending an email, and that's all that I really wanted to do. But we're not doing this in a good way. We're not putting this on a background job. We're running this synchronously, and that's going to overload the server if we're doing this a lot, assuming we're getting a lot of requests at a time. So let's actually hook this up to Sidekick. So right now, we're going to run all the servers on this tab. We've got 2 servers running. So we need to install Sidekick. And that's a gem. So we're going to update our gem file. We're going to bundle install that, which is going to happen instantly because I already have it installed. And now the only thing we need to do to tell, since Rails 4.2, I think, active job has been a thing, which kind of wraps around a lot of background processors that you can use. All we have to do is tell active job to use Sidekick, and then it will use all the default settings of Sidekick, which is fine for now. So to do that, we're just going to update our config application file, and we're just going to tell it. I'm going to copy this afterwards because I'm probably going to mess this up, but I think it's active job q adapter equals Sidekick. Let's see if I got that right. Active job q adapter equals Sidekick. I think I did. Look at that. I did it right. Okay. And that's all we need to do. Again, we're messing with an application file. So I'm gonna full screen this for a second because we're gonna get an error here after and you can see right here whenever we deliver that email, Action Mailer is doing this, and it was doing it through active job, even though it did it synchronously. So we're gonna restart our server, and we should get an error here because, wait for it, no, maybe not. I assumed we would. Maybe it's whenever I send out an email. Let's see. But anyway, this shouldn't work because we don't have a Redis server running. So let's issue that curl request one more time. Let me clear this screen. Okay, so we got a big error, and let's see what our server actually said. Okay, just said it can't connect to Redis. We tried to. We said we're going to use Sidekick. Sidekick depends on Redis. We don't have a Redis server running. So let's just start a simple Redis server. There it is. I just full screen that pane. And now I'm going to clear this just to make sure we see there's no emails being sent yet. I'm going to send this. We should not get an error here. We didn't. But we also didn't get an email, and that's because we don't have Sidekick running. Sidekick needs a worker to run, hence it's a new service. So let's start up Sidekick. Now, if we run Sidekick in general, it'll run the default queue. Active job places all mailers in what's called the mailer queue. So we need to specify that we're running, I think it's mailers actually. We need to specify that we're running the mailers queue. And as soon as we do this, we should get an email that sends. Yep, there it is. Okay, and now because this is a service, it's running, and you can see it delivered that job. Now, whenever we issue this curl request, it's going to work. And you can see how much faster this is. because we're not running the server. The Rails server is not handling the sending of this email anymore. It's offloading it to a background job. Okay, so we're sending one email whenever a comment is created, but to do that, we are using 4 services. We have our Rails app. We have that bouncing icon. Did I let my time track? Okay. We use Harvest for time tracking at work. Okay, we have 4 services running. Let's say that you wanted to pull down this project and run it. You'd have to run a Redis server. You'd have to run Sidekick. You'd have to run MailDev. What if your versions are different of all those? What if the fact that you're on Windows or Unix is a problem versus me being on a Mac? We have different environments. It can be a big pain. And this situation right here is one that I really like tools like Docker. Well, let's get right back into it. Any questions on anything I've done so far? Just sending out an email, nothing crazy. Okay, so going back here. Phase 2, let's actually transform this to use Docker. So what's Docker? We're actually going to answer this question now. Docker, a whale, is it's a platform for running containers, running and managing containers. I'm sure a lot of us have probably heard of Docker. I'm sure a lot of us even use it. But I want to go over this just in case there's, I'm sure a lot of us here really haven't. It's a platform for running containers. The idea of a container is not new. Containers have been around for a long time, and they're not Docker specific. Rocket is a competitor to Docker. Maybe not competitor, but they're another player in that field. A container is pretty much a virtual machine that's very lightweight. It's a virtual machine without the operating system layer. Docker containers, and this is kind of platform specific, Docker containers will just use the kernel that your operating system is running on. So we'll use the kernel of my Mac right here, which is Unix based. So lightweight, which means they can spin up very quick. They're not as large typically, though some Docker containers can get very large. That's one thing to watch out for. So whenever you're doing it. So we're going to get into actually using it now. But okay, so these are containers. They like to use the shipyard containers. I like to use Tupperware containers. But the idea with Docker is you're going to run your application in containers. A container, is lightweight OS. It's ideally kind of sticks to one service. So each container would kind of run one service, and they're meant to talk together, which is exactly what we're doing in this Rails app. We have things talking together. Okay, so let's rebuild everything we just did in Docker. We're really going to do that. So let's do that. So I'm going to close out of everything we just did, all the servers. And I'm just going to start removing these panes because we're not going to need 4 panes once we get Docker going. We're just going to use 1. Okay. So to put our Rails app on Docker, the first thing we're going to need to do is we're going to need to add a Docker file. And what a Docker file does is it basically gives the container the instructions for starting up and running your application. So I'm going to copy a Docker file that I've got. It's pretty short. And we'll go through it. Whoops. Need to get, yep. Okay. So if I go back to my code here, we've got our Docker file. And this is all that this one is. So it's its own syntax. If you've never seen this before, don't worry. This is not a language you're supposed to have known. But we're going to start from the Ruby image, which is just a Docker image that we're going to pull down that is Ruby. So we already have Ruby installed. We can assume that. Notice how I mentioned that Docker images can get big. I think the Ruby image is pretty large to begin with, like a couple hundred megabytes at least. And if you're running a lot of containers with that, that can get pretty big. There's ways around that, but that's not in the scope of this talk. So we're going to start with Ruby. We're going to install some necessary tools, and then we're going to set a working directory for where our code's going to be. And then these last few steps are kind of the steps that you would do if you were just going to pull down any Ruby project, any Rails project any project that uses a gem file. You're going to, in this case, we're putting the gem file in Docker first, and then we're running bundle install to actually install all of the dependencies, and then we're going to put the rest of our code in this Docker image. So let's build this, and the way we do that, we run docker build dot, that's just the path for our Docker file, and we're going to call this Rails app, and that's the name of our image. Okay, and that went very quickly because I've installed this, and the reason that might take a little bit longer is installing the dependencies. It would have to bundle install everything. I didn't want to risk internet connectivity. I always seem to have something happen here. So we've got our Docker image built successfully. So the way we run this now, we're going to run the image, but before we do that, we need to specify that we want to map port 3000 on our machine to port 3000 in our Docker image, because that's just what our Rails app is running on by default. Then we're going to say we want to run Rails app, and then we need to give it just a command to start the Rails server. And that's going to be just bundle exec Rails s. So we're going to run that, and then you see the familiar Rails server. And there we go. Very zoomed in, but we can see all of the lovely comments that we just added that say foo. But this right here, this is no longer running necessarily on, it is running on our machine, obviously, but it's not running, with our dev environment. This is running in the Docker container. We've just mapped port 3000 to port 3000 of our Docker app. Yeah?
Yeah, I know it didn't specify where Docker should run this assume the Docker files.
Yeah, it should be wherever you run, wherever your Docker file is, I believe. Short answer is I don't know for sure, but it should be wherever your Docker file is. It's gonna, and we did kind of specify that it does. We did add that right here. We're adding everything in our code to that working directory. So I think that probably answers your question. Good question, Vance. Okay, and you can see our logs here. And this is our app running in Docker. We really haven't solved any problems here, though. We could. I'm just going to close out of this. We could run. So that's not going to work anymore. We could run every service we have, Sidekick, Redis, and MailDev. Also, there's usually going to be a fifth service involved, but we're using, and that's going to be your database. We're just using SQLite right now. So you can assume that the vast majority of apps are going to use, Postgres or MySQL or whatever database of choice. Probably not SQLite, though. So if this were a production app and we had this set up, we'd probably be using 5 services, which is another thing to manage. You could spin up, you could open up, panes again and run individual Docker containers, in each terminal pane. But then we kind of, how many problems have we solved doing that? Not a ton. So Docker's got this really cool tool out called Docker Compose, which will manage the running of all of your containers for a given session. It manages them all, and it does a really cool thing, which is creating a network for all of your Docker containers, and only for those containers. We're going to get into why that's really cool here in a second. Has anyone used Docker Compose at all? Cool. Okay, that's awesome. I think this may blow your mind, or maybe you can just humor me and do mind-blowing reactions. Okay, so Docker Compose is a tool that manages the running of all your containers, and to help with that, we're going to copy in another file. And this is the last Docker file. We're going to not name Docker file, but the last Docker-related file that we're going to copy in. Whoops, I need to specify that I want to copy it here. Okay, and there's our Docker Compose file. It's just a YAML file, so this format is one you will be familiar with, most likely. So let's look at this. This is not very long either, just 9 lines. We specify the version at the top because this is version 2 of the Docker Compose file format. If you don't specify this, Docker Compose will read it as version 1, which is just not what we're using. And then everything under the services key here is going to be a list of containers. So right now we just have 1. And these are going to be, all of these types of commands are things that you can specify in the Docker run command. We're going to specify, we're specifying the command we want it to run. We're specifying the ports we want it to map to. We're specifying a volumes command. That's going to be really cool. I'll talk about that in a second. And then we're just flagging that we want to, instead of pulling in an external image, which an image would be a pre-built thing like Redis. We're going to pull in a Redis image later. We're building this manually using our Docker file. And again, the dot is the location of our Docker file. So this right now, instead of, I'm going to go back to pane 2 here. Instead of running this whole Docker command here, we've already got all of that config kind of set up in our Docker Compose file. So we're just going to run Docker Compose up. and that's going to run, it's going to run our app. We're going to get our server. And I mentioned, I want to focus on this thing right here. It's doing this thing called creating a network. That's going to be really cool when we need our services to talk to each other, which we're going to do here in a second. So this is, right now, we've accomplished nothing new. This is the exact same situation. In fact, Docker Compose is just going to be running Docker run underneath the hood. But it's just, this is going to be a much easier way to manage multiple containers. So I've talked about using multiple containers enough. Let's actually start doing it. We're going to do it baby steps, kind of like we did the first go. So let's just get mail dev going. We're not even going to worry about Sidekick for now. So and all we got to do to turn off Sidekick for now is go to our application config file and just comment that out. And now let's actually go back to our Docker Compose file and let's add in mail dev. Now I can't remember the image path right off the top of my head. It's kind of like GitHub repos when, let me show you what it looks like. So Docker images by default will live on Docker Hub. Just like there's GitHub, there's Docker Hub. You can push we could push this Rails app image up there if we wanted to. This right here is just a link to that image on Docker Hub. So somebody's name, MailDev, the creator of MailDev. And we want to map (1080) to port 80. For whatever reason, the Docker container runs the MailDev server on port 80. I have not found a reason for that. Ideally, it would make sense to map 1080 just to 1080 because that's what we would assume would run on. For whatever reason, it runs on 80, and I could not find a reason for that. And that's all we need to do. These 4 lines are going to run. They're going to set up our MailDev server. So if you're using Docker like this, you manually don't ever need to do anything like npm install MailDev. This image handles all that for you. So we're going to close this down, and then we're going to run Docker. I'm going to do my best to keep all my code at the top of the screen. We're going to run Docker Compose up. So that's going to, you can see we got MailDev running here. And we've got, one of the nice things here too, which, nice depending on how you look at it, is all of our logs are in one place. It means you got to parse through them, but, again, it's nice if it might be nice, it might be a pain. So we've got both things running right now. And you can see these are the official names of the container. They're the name of the container, which we're specifying in the Docker Compose file. So MailDev and web. And the number is just the number of which container it is. We could spin up 5 web containers if we wanted to, and they'd be web 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we should be able to, let's make sure that everything's running. We've got that, and we should have this mapped to. Now MailDev just holds everything in memory. So if you needed to store data, keep that into account. So whenever we bring down the server and bring it back up, it's gonna go away. But this looks like it's working. And for whatever reason, I don't know why the Docker image runs it on 25, but that's fine. It's just weird. Okay, so we have MailDev running. So we should be able to create a curl request to create a new comment, and that will send out an email. Again, we're still using active job, but we're not using Sidekick, so we'll send it synchronously. But we need to make one change to that, and that is going into our development config where we had our SMTP settings. We need to change up some of this. So localhost no longer works because each container is kind of its own IP address. So localhost refers to that container specifically. Well, so that kind of means that the localhost of a Rails app, which is what is running here, is not going to have any access to our MailDev server. So this is where the idea of a Docker network really comes into play. If we go back, let me go back to the Docker file, the Docker Compose file. When you run Docker Compose, it creates a network. Kind of going back up. It looks like it must have created it when I ran it the very first time, so it doesn't say it here. But it creates a network that allows Docker containers to talk to each other really easily. And the way you reference another container, at least the host name of another container, is just with the name of this container. So if I'm in the Rails app, and I'm going into this development file, I'm not going to know the IP address of that container. It's going to be whatever the IP is of the Docker daemon, but it's going to have some weird prefix after that to where you can actually access the container. There's really no feasible way to know that. But by switching this to just MailDev, the Docker network has got, it's not an internal DNS thing, and I looked it up and I couldn't find out exactly how they're doing it, but it's like an internal DNS type thing, where it's going to map maildev, the host name, to whatever actual IP that the container is running on. So that's all we need to do for that. And then this, again, just change it to 25, because the Docker container does that, the Docker image does that. So let's bring this down, because we updated a development file. Oh, I think one thing that I skipped over was I mentioned that in this Docker Compose file, I mentioned this and I never talked about it. Whenever you build a Docker image, like this one, for example, whenever you build it, it adds all of your code to the Docker, to whenever you run the Docker container. That means if we make a code change locally, it's not going to be represented in that container because it's a whole another block of code. Well, what this volumes key does is something that you probably wouldn't want to do in production unless you're using a database, because you want database data to be stored somewhere other than your container. But this right here will map all of my current code in this file to the container. So if I make a change here locally on my machine, which the container is still running on, but locally, it's going to update the Docker container as well. So again, really helpful for development. Probably don't want to use it for production unless you're trying to save out data from a database somewhere. So I realized I forgot to talk about that. So let's get back here. This should all be set up. I think, did we restart? Oh, we need to restart that. All right, everything's running, so we should be able to run. Let me refresh this, make sure everything's going. Good, and now we should be able to make our curl request. And there we go. So we've got maildev hooked up on Docker. We've got our Rails app hooked up on Docker. What else do we need? We need Sidekick, and we need Redis. So let's keep going. And you can see these changes are not very much. The big changes you'll just need to make are basically, instead of pointing to localhost, port number, it's going to point to Docker container port number. So let's re-enable. Actually, let's add Sidekick and Redis to the Docker Compose file. So Redis is just a core image, and that's all we need to add right there. By default, Redis runs on port 6379, I think, and the image exposes that so that everything in the network will still be able to access that port, but I wouldn't be able to access it from my terminal session here. I would need to actually be in one of these containers to access it. So you get, I guess, a little bit of security. There's a lot of blog posts as to why Docker is not super secure, and you can add things to make it better. But that's anyway, just an FYI. So that's all we need to do for the Redis image. And then for Sidekick, there's no Docker image for Sidekick, so we need to build one. And that might sound like a pain, but really all we're doing with Sidekick is we're using the gem that's part of our Rails app to run the worker. So we can just use the exact same code, the config we have set up for our Rails app. We're going to use the same Docker file image. We're going to change the command. Instead of bundle exec Rails S, we're just going to use bundle exec sidekick -q mailers to run our mailers queue. And we still want it mapped to our code locally, just for development purposes. And we're going to change that to be Sidekick. Okay. Now, to actually use Sidekick, we're going to need to re-add it into our application here. So uncommenting that. So now we're officially using Sidekick again. We're going to bring everything down. And you can see, when we sent that email out, it still used active job, just didn't lay that job on a Sidekick queue. So we're going to run that, and we should get an error here, I'm pretty sure. Wait for it. Okay. So we get a big fat error. And this is an error we didn't get before. And the reason for this error is, where's my error at? Is that Sidekick was trying to connect to Redis on localhost 6379. Well, we can't do that because localhost on the Sidekick image is not the same as the local. It's not the same localhost that Redis is going to be accessible on. So we need to change the host name for Sidekick to access Redis to just be Redis, because that's the name of our image, and our Docker network makes that happen for us. So we need to make that change, it's completely, you can easily do that. You just got to add in a little initializer. So I'm just going to bring that down for now. So I just copied a Sidekick initializer. It's just a few lines. Let's take a look at that. Okay, and we're just specifying that we want every link that Sidekick tries to connect to Redis to, we want to change that to be this right here. So normally by default, this would have been, localhost or the loopback, well, spelled right, or the loopback address 127.0.0.1. We're changing that to Redis because the Docker network is going to resolve that to the right container. And then this is just the protocol, Redis. We would need that regardless. We still need to have the port number. That's important to note. And again, only our Docker container, the idea is only our Docker container can access that port. We wouldn't be able to access outside of that. Again, feel free to read up on various security loopholes in Docker to find out to find a lot of dirt. But that's the idea behind it. Okay, so we've got that going. Let's restart this up, and we should not get an error this time. Okay, and it looks like Sidekick successfully connected. So right now we've got, I'm gonna go through this, we've got Redis running, we've got Sidekick running, we've got MailDev running, and we've got our Rails app running. So we've got 4 services running. Everything is officially hooked up to Docker now. And let's, if I refresh this, okay, nothing there. Whenever we issue that curl request again, there we go. So Sidekick sent this, and I think the reason there was the holding there for a second is because we kind of went over this last time. For some reason, I don't know if it's Rails or active auto serializers, but the first time you make a change on a server and then restart your server, it seems to hang for a second. So you'll notice these are happening much quicker. So that should give us 3 emails. Also, they're quick because the server is not synchronously sending out emails. It's offloading it to Sidekick, and if we go here, we can see that. We can see Sidekick is getting the active action mailer delivery job, and it's processing it. And that's all the code we're gonna add. That's man, we got out a little bit earlier than I thought. So that's all I got. I am the code boss. No, don't forget that. So are there any questions about anything? Yeah, Rob.
How does this work in practice? My place in Techlahoma, again, put back in 10 minutes. The same thing that the Docker abstraction and your own registries.
Sometimes, yeah. It's not a silver bullet. You do put more time into setting up your environment with Docker. We use it for development, and we do deploy with Docker as well. If you were deploying with Docker, you wouldn't want to use you definitely wouldn't want to map your volumes to local code, and you wouldn't want to build it from a Docker file. You would want to create your image, put it on Docker Hub, or put it on your own private Docker registry, which you can do for free. And run it that way. So that makes, I will say that the times that, for the projects we've used it, we've got a handful of those, it does genuinely make the deployment process easier. And we did have one project where we did it microservice driven, which really sucked. That's 15 services all talking to each other. That was a nightmare, but I could not imagine how we would have done it without Docker. So in that situation, I think it really saved us a lot of time. We're not doing a ton of services here, so this one you wouldn't necessarily need to use that in production, but we have noticed a benefit from that. There are security concerns. I keep mentioning that because I don't want to say that Docker is awesome, 100% awesome. There's issues with it, but it's a tool that's pushing things in the right direction. Yeah.
Not to change the onboarding new dev story.
Oh, you're right. I need to repeat the question. Rob's question was, for onboarding new developers, has this been difficult? It's a challenge. Whenever I got started at Clever, they were already using Docker. I knew a little bit about it, but nothing I didn't use Compose. I'd never done anything real with it. I just had run an image. So yeah, it's not the same extent as learning a language, but it's learning a big tool. So it does, yeah. It's not like it's an easy tool to learn. You got to understand why you even need this in the first place. So we have not had to put any, I would say, junior developers on it, and I think we may have had one, but he was not super involved with this. So it is not an easy tool to learn. So that's definitely a concern. Rod or Peter.
It's a related question, which is fantastic demo.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Live, that's very great. How long did it take you to come up to speed?
To do this? I watched about a year ago. I watched a Thank you. Peter's question was, how long did it take me to get up to speed with using Docker in this way? I'm gonna get there. I'm gonna get there. I watched a 4 to 6 hour Pluralsight video about what Docker was. It was about a year ago. It's called Deep Dive into Docker, and that kind of got me understanding why you even need Docker and what it is. And then, I would say about a week of using it to really, using it a good chunk of time to really get familiar with it. So again, not a super easy tool, but it's I don't want to think of it as so much as a tool as more like a paradigm we're kind of using. Like Docker is a tool, but the container paradigm is something that is gonna be around for a little bit and has been around for a while. So I like to think of it like that. It's an investment. Yeah.
Question from Twitch. Do you have any advice for deploying your Docker Compose services?
The question was, do I have any advice for deploying a Docker Compose, the whole Docker Compose setup? On a production machine, you probably want to run it in, GNU Screen or tmux or something, so you can get out of the session. Make sure that your databases are mapped to volumes, because if your container goes down, your data goes with it. So it needs to be, not replicated, but it needs to be mapped somewhere else. That's the biggest thing. I'll be honest, we haven't done major like apps that where if they go down, like we're going to get calls from X amount of clients in the middle of the night. It's still, we're playing around with a lot of applications, but nothing that if it goes down is the end of the world. So that's about the extent that I can give on that. I don't know is the short answer, and I like that answer a lot.
Another quick question. Can I use Pry to debug this?
You can, but it's not. I'm a junior developer, everyone. So the question was, can you use Pry? Let me make sure we're doing, okay, we got 10 minutes. Can you use Pry, which is a gem, which basically you can enter into any of your Ruby code and it will pop out a REPL. Just like breakpoints work in Java, debugger works in JavaScript. Yes, you can, and I want to. I think if I tried to do it, it would take a few minutes, and I probably would just mess it up. But you can. You have to. There's a couple of settings you have to set. By default, right now we would not be able to, that's because the Docker Compose log won't stop at any point in time. It won't stop to open up that REPL. So what you need to do is there's a couple of settings. Let's see, and let's see. Well, you can, let's see, there's two settings you set in Docker Compose and I don't know what they do, honestly. Let's see, TTY is one of the settings, which is a terminal setting. But basically, you set those settings in Docker Compose, and then you run Docker Compose as a daemon, and then if you manually attach, so right now we're not running it as in daemon mode, I mean the logs. If you run the logs in daemon mode, you can attach to the container that's running your Rails app manually, so like just using Docker attach, and then you can get your REPL. Because yeah, we've had to do that. It's a little bit extra, but you can do it. Yeah.
If you have, say, one service that depends on another service that depends on two services, you orchestrate that.
Yeah, and I meant to do that. I forgot about that. But I did mean to do that. So, for example, Jesus. Nick's question was, can you have services in Docker and Docker Compose depend on each other? So the idea, I think, being to where one service may not start until this other service has started, etc. And you can. And it's very plain Englishy. We can just update. So I meant to do this because Sidekick depends on Redis, and I guess it's just nice that our app did not fail. But it just depends on Redis. And yeah, you can chain these. So you can say, and then you can say Redis depends on this thing. And then what will happen is it won't, Sidekick and whatever service you're adding this to won't wait for Redis to be ready. It'll just wait for the container to have started. So if you needed something, to happen in the Redis container before Sidekick started, then you need to get deeper into things like communication between containers, and that would involve code changes. But by default, yeah, you can use the depends on key in Docker Compose to specify that you don't want this container to start until these other ones have started. Very good question that I actually knew the answer to. I'm surprised.
Are there any real pros or cons either way to having like web and Sidekick different Docker containers as opposed to running them in the same container with something like Foreman?
The question was, do you get a benefit from running Sidekick in a separate container? I haven't run them together. Typically, I just have run containers as one process at a time, and I haven't used Foreman a ton, so I can't comment on that. But I'm sure you could do it, and honestly, you do get the benefit of not having two containers. I keep talking up how awesome Docker is. We have 2 Rails apps running right now, and they're on top of the Ruby image, which is let's just see if we even let's just see how big the Ruby image is. Ruby image is 730 megabytes because it sits on top of Ubuntu or something. There are other images that you can get for Ruby that make it much smaller, but the default one is So we've got a lot of stuff, much more space than we're needing to allocate it for this, and we're doing that twice. So it makes sense to do it on the same container. I just haven't done that. Yes.
That's not a good idea.
Running the same container is not a good idea?
It doesn't actually have, the way it's designed is for it basically to go through your Docker file and will run a place. If you're then having to add on systemd or something like that, or something that's doing processing scheduling, you can do it. It's just not the best idea.
Not the Docker way.
It's not the Docker way.
All right.
You can do it though.
With Paul being a senior developer to my junior developer, we're going to go with his answer, which says don't do it.
So if you can't do, what about running fast or Chrome or something?
Yeah. No, I don't know the answer. I haven't.
My answer is that you either need to set it up, you either have to run something that has a scheduler, or you run something like Kubernetes on top of Docker that does the orchestration and it has a scheduler.
Yeah. Yeah. We're exploring Kubernetes at work, but I haven't gotten into it. But as far as orchestration goes, it seems really powerful. Difficult to learn, but powerful. All right, any other questions?
One more question from Twitch that kind of touches on what we just talked about. How about deploying with Docker Swarm or Kubernetes? And there's any special compose specs?
I haven't done that. The question was, what about using Docker Swarm or Kubernetes? We've got a resident Docker expert who's not here at Clever. Or he's at Clever, he's not here right now. So it makes me sad because I was going to offload all the questions to him. But he's messed with Kubernetes quite a bit. And we both messed with Docker Swarm maybe 6 months ago. And it was still in relative infancy then. I don't know what the state is right now. I know Docker Swarm is ideally supposed to play really well with the other Docker files, because Docker file and Docker Compose, because it's part of the whole ecosystem. And it ideally makes it really easy to spin up X amount of containers you need. But I get, as far as comparing it to Kubernetes, and Paul, you can comment on this more too. From our research, it seems like Kubernetes is just it's more difficult to set up, but it handles much more unique situations that you might need. But I can't comment on either. I haven't really used them. Did I get that right, Paul? Yeah, so there's a good, the question was, can Vance just use shell scripts? There's this will be what I end on, but there's a really funny blog post that's called like Heroku versus Docker, and it's one developer asking another developer like, how should I deploy this application? And it's a whole like 20-minute conversation about no, you don't want to deploy to Heroku. That's old. That's not cool anymore. You got to use Docker. You got to hook it up to Kubernetes. You need all these containers. You need you need to throw an Elasticsearch in there, a bunch of different things, and then the end of it is just the guy saying screw it. I'm using Heroku. Yeah, so it's pick your poison. There's benefits and there's detriments. But this was I really enjoyed kind of seeing Docker used in this way, and this is just for development purposes. I haven't gone over deployment very much, but this makes sense to me, and I don't know. I get excited about this this type of development. And we're definitely not Docker's not the silver bullet. The container battle still needs to be fought, but it's moving, and it's cool to see. I think that is my last slide. Thank you all very much, and thanks everyone for tuning in on Twitch.
Thanks a lot, man.